Hello everybody, welcome back to Retro Computing Ranch. So today we're going to dig in a little bit further on our Motorola VME 68K powered Chyron system. And last time that we were here, we were able to power the system up and talk to the VME CPU card. So after I finished filming, I was able to dump the complete ROM, and a friend over on the Usagi Electric Discord was able to run a disassembler on it, and we found out some good information. So this system is running a real-time operating system called PSOS Plus. It is similar to VxWorks, but it predates it. And so I'm really happy that we have a backup of that ROM, but the actual operating system and application data is on this hard drive. So we need to get this hard drive backed up, because as we all know, spinning media is unreliable. Now, normally you would just say, hey, let's connect it to some random computer and back it up. But this is a SCSI hard drive, or Small Computer Systems Interface. Now, I have a pile of SCSI interface cards, which is great, but they're all PCI. And none of my current computers that I have set up at the house have PCI card slot. But what I do have in storage, I have just boxes and boxes of mainboards. I went and looked, and I found this one. This is a Socket 775 Pentium 4 machine, maybe a single core, maybe a dual core. And it's got RAM in it, it has VGA out, and it has a PCI slot. So I think this is going to be a great candidate to use with Linux, so that we can hook up the SCSI hard drive and run DD Rescue, so that we can get all of the data off of this drive and have it all backed up, because at some point this drive will fail, and then we'll need to replace it with like a blue SCSI or a SCSI knife or something like that. So anyways, let's go ahead, figure out how to get this hard drive out of this card cage, and then hook it up to this system, and we'll run through how to do the backup. And then what I want to do at the end of the episode, if everything works out, is I'd like to put the hard drive back in. And I was talking to somebody that used to use these systems, and they told me how to connect a monitor to the video out. I'd like to see if we can actually see the user interface on this thing. So let's get started and see if we can get that done today. Okay, so the first step that we're going to want to do here is we're going to want to disconnect the SCSI cable from the backplane of the system. So we got that done. Let's go ahead and disconnect power. Now, this SCSI cable does connect down to the back panel, so let's unplug it from the drive as well, carefully. And we've pulled that out of the way. Now I can see that underneath the hard drive, there's another card in here with a coax connector connected to it, so I've unplugged that. Let me go ahead. I think if we take these screws out, that will free the card cage to slide up and out a little bit, because this lower card has another connector that it's connected to the backplane. So we want to be careful how we pull here to make sure we're not damaging any cabling. Alright, I think that should be good enough. I can see the screws on the hard drive now. So let me get those out. Without dropping them down into the chassis, because that would probably become quite the recovery operation. Okay, yes, so that is quite an interesting card there. Let me see if I can disconnect that so we can take the cage out entirely. I'm wondering what that card is. We'll take a look at that once I get the screws out. Okay, the drive is free. I want to make sure it doesn't run into that board. Okay, so let's take a look at this card. It says Chyron Corp Preview Output Board. I'm I'm going to pull that out as well so that we can get a closer look at it. And then we'll just make sure we put it back in before we fire the system back up. So the cable that is plugged into this card, and the card itself, has the kind of connector on it that almost looks like a Eurocard bus slot. So it probably ties in pretty deeply with the system. I would imagine that there's a parallel bus that's brought out to it. Okay, so on the card we have an Altera Max and we have a Raytheon chip. So I'm going to document that so that I can look up those chips and see if we can find any information on them. Of course, what you run into on a lot of this bespoke hardware is that it's so odd and it's so custom that it may have custom part numbers on it. Alright, so now I have all the parts here. We need to go ahead and put together a system that works well enough to back up this disk onto an image file on our solid state drive. So let's start putting things together. We'll plug our video cable in there. And I've got a SATA cable here. So we'll plug that in there. And we'll plug in our drive. And then I'll have to get power to that in a few moments. We're going to plug in our SCSI cable to our SCSI adapter. In this case, I did some more digging and I found an Adaptec AHA 2940UW. That should give us the fastest throughput talking to this drive. So we'll install that card as so. And then let's make sure that we are installing the cable correctly to the drive. If you plug it in backwards, it's not going to work, and in fact it could damage the system. That's connected properly. Now let's get power for the system. And I'm probably going to end up blocking the view of some of these components, but it is what it is. We'll pull that around. Well, I didn't want that to happen. That fell right off the end of the bench. That's what happens when you're operating with very limited amounts of space. Okay, nothing is really wanting to cooperate here, but that too is fine. Now, let me see if I can find... There is a serial ATA power cable. So we're going to plug that into our SATA drive. And we'll set our SATA cable, our SATA drive off to the side. And then we have the challenge of getting power to our SCSI hard drive. Fortunately, we have a little bit of cable length here that we can play with. There we go. Now this was working correctly in the host system, so hopefully it will just work here. If you haven't had the opportunity to spend some time with SCSI, then you're probably not aware of all the issues that you can have with things not wanting to work correctly. So you have to have the controller LUN, the drive LUN or ID set correctly. You have to have termination set correctly. There's a whole variety of things that can make SCSI just not work. And hopefully we won't run into any of that today, but if we do, I do have the drive data sheet on my laptop, which is just off to the side here. So let me get our keyboard and mouse connected, and then we will see if this system wants to fire up for us. Okay. All right, I think we're all set to go here. So let me power cycle the monitor and switch on power. Nothing blew up, so we're in a good place so far. Our drive is spinning, sounds good. Let's see if the system comes around. Now there was no CMOS battery in here, so I would imagine that it's going to freak out. Okay, there's our SCSI host adapter. Let's see if it'll detect our drive. It did. Okay, we're getting a little further this time. There we go. Perfect. All right, let's see if we can get into Linux Mint. Okay, we're seeing some signs of life here. And there's our boot splash. I can see some drive activity on the SCSI card. There's an LED there. Let's escape so we hit our progress screen here so I can see what the system is up to. Alright, we're getting a little bit further along now. We're into the normal boot process. Alright, so we're into the OS proper now. So, my question is, let's open a terminal and see if I have the utility that I need. And it appears that I do not. Now, what I want to take a look at here is I want to open gparted, the GNOME partition editor, and take a look as towards if we can see any structures on the disk. I don't imagine we can, because PSOS is probably such an odd system. I would expect we're not going to see it. Okay, so as expected, we're seeing this drive as an unknown, which is fine. We can still make a perfect bitwise copy of it and then open it in an editor and see what data is actually there. So, we're in the correct directory for that. I'm going to do a... there we are. A DD rescue. And the syntax for this is going to be -D and then -R3. And we're going to have to specify the device. I believe that was dev SDC. And then we want to specify our image file and our log file. We're in the directory where we want to put the image file. So I'm going to call this maxine1.img, and we're going to call the log maxine1.log. Now what this should do is attempt to recover data. Now DD rescue as opposed to DD will actually retry if it has issues reading the data from a sector, and the R3 specifies that it should attempt that 3 times before it gives up. So I think the only other thing we're going to need here is we're probably going to need sudo to do that. And it's running. Alright, so what we're going to run into now though is this is probably going to take a huge amount of time. It says 45 minutes. I think it'll take significantly longer. Let's give it some time to run and see how long it actually takes, but I'm not going to make you sit here and watch that. So we'll come back when it's finished up, and then we'll open the file in a hex editor and see what we can see. Okay, so it looks like our backup finished up, and Actually, it said it was going to take 42 minutes. It took 43 minutes and 42 seconds. So just a touch longer than it said it was going to take. So now, let's go over here. We have our image file. And I want to see if we have something we can open it with. I think a hex viewer would probably be appropriate. So let me see what I have here. This is the WX Hex editor. Now, when I installed this, it said it was for large files. It may work, it may not work, I don't know, but we're going to find out. Okay, so there's our image file. Okay, there we go. Let's see what we have here. So I can see some text that says invalid partition, table error, error loading operating system, missing operating system. Let's see if we have anything else here that we can pull out. Scribe vol 3, bitmap sys, flist sys. Nope, there's a text, some text that says Maxine, so we're in the right place. Read ahead, Z News, news backup, top, more prod, news fonts, prod fonts, production, news 4, new news font, font backup. Okay, this is all good stuff, Martha. So there is information here. We just have to figure out what the file system is, which, I don't know. That could be quite the challenge. We would almost need to run strings on this, but I'm concerned that running strings on this would perhaps give us a huge text that would take forever to look, or a huge text file that would take forever to look through. But perhaps it's not entirely a bad idea. I've heard that one of the things to be looking for is the font information. So it looks like perhaps this disk is mostly empty. Okay, cool. Let's go back to our command prompt. I wonder if I even have strings here. Nope, I don't have strings, and I don't want to go through the whole difficulty of downloading and installing strings on here at the moment. So let's go ahead and move on to the original goal at the end of hooking up to the preview output to see if we can see anything on the screen. What I am going to do, though, it's very late. I need to get to bed so I can go to work tomorrow. I will come back to this tomorrow evening, but of course it will be no time for you. So let's get right back to it. Okay, so it's the next day. We're back at it. I do have some really great news. I've been working with some of the absolute legends over at the Usagi Electric Discord. And we've been analyzing ROM dumps and hard drive dumps. And it looks like we do know that this system runs PSOS Plus, which is a real-time operating system that was fairly common on VME systems. It also runs a file system called File Plus, P-H-I-L-E. The issue there is we don't have any way to mount that file system. I can look at it with strings. I've run binwalk on it to see if I could extract files. And we haven't gotten very far on that, but I'm hoping we'll make some progress shortly. Now, I want to get this put back together because I would like to see if we can get this to fire up. But we have one issue. This cable is fairly thoroughly damaged, and I don't know if this end is shorted or not, so we're going to remove it and I pulled the same cable, although it's quite a bit shorter, from one of the other Chyron systems that I have in storage. And we're going to just swap it in temporarily. And we're going to hook up a Sony Trinitron PVM that I have and see if we can get video output. So let me get to this and we will get everything going. It's always when you're in a hurry that things don't want to cooperate. There we go. Now we're starting to make some progress. I know it's not the right tool, but it's the tool I have at hand. Alright, there we go. So, we're ready to hook that connector back to the preview board. It's in solid. We'll go ahead and connect our video output and see if we can avoid what originally caused this issue, which I think was things being kind of forced into position, probably by the technical team at the TV station that owned this before. I almost cut a ribbon cable. I have to be a bit more careful there. Fortunately, I didn't puncture the cable, but it is an important cable. It's the one that goes to our AUI. Okay, we've got that folded out of the way. Let's go ahead and get our SCSI cable connected to our drive. I'm in such a hurry that I didn't even change into work clothes when I got home from work. I just want to see if we can get this thing to fire up. It's an exciting prospect. Okay, we've got that tucked out of the way. That's tucked out of the way. Let's get our drive cage reattached so we don't have grounding issues. Alright, we'll throw our lid back on this. And throw a couple of screws in it. I can hear my dogs barking from next door. I'm going to have to go feed them shortly. So I'd like to get this rolling along. Alright. So we have a BNC connection here. It's a short cable, but hopefully that will not be a problem. And here is our Sony PVM, which really fits on top of that case pretty well. I'm going to connect to input 1. And let me get you moved over and we'll see what we can do here. Okay, so I'm cabled up, we're ready to go. Now, here's the rub. While I do have some Chyron keyboards, I don't have the interconnect cables, and I don't know how they hook up. So, we're just going to see if we can fire the machine up and see if we get any video out on the preview output. So I'm turning on the PVM. We're going to give it a few moments to warm up. It just degaussed. There we go. Let's go ahead and start our Chyron box. Whoa! Hopefully that's not all that we're going to get. Okay, so the Maxine that we've been working with apparently has either some sort of hardware issue or configuration issue, because I was not able to get sane video output out of it. And I was kind of halfway ready to give up on it, and then I thought, you know what, I've got other Chyron systems here. Let's pull another one and test. The other Maxine that I've got is the one that was giving us a fail on its status light. But I've got an image store here. I've got it hooked up to the PVM. Let's go ahead, switch it on, and see what we get out of it. Okay, our fail light cleared. We're probably in the beginning of the startup phase. Oh! Whoa! Yes! Okay. Image Store 525. We're passing our hardware test. This is Rev 1.0. It's loading the operating system currently. Okay. Image Store hardware initialization. 4 megs of RAM available. And there we go. So we're showing that we have a Chyron Image Store version 9.20. It thinks that it's 11/3 of 25. System clock is not that far off. It's February of 26. 7:32 AM PM. I don't know. Automatic system reboot completed. Image Store, disk utils, network utils. Probably a few other buttons there that we can't see. But this is great news. So what I need to do in an upcoming video is I need to sort out how we're going to connect a Chyron Image Store keyboard to this system and be able to interact here. I'd like to be able to see what's available under these various menus and see if there's any existing content here. Alright, well, I'm going to call this a success, even though we ran into plenty of issues during this week. This makes me feel fantastic. So, coming up in future videos, we're going to be doing some further exploration. We'll see if we can get our Maxines fixed. We'll test our other image store. I also have a Maxi, which is the larger one that has a bad power supply. I'm going to see if I can get that one fixed. And we're just going to do some exploration. Eventually, I'd like to see if we could load BSD for 68K and then run some custom software. I've got a few ideas. I'd like to, well, I'm not going to get into it right now. That'll be a surprise for the future. Make sure that you subscribe so that you get a notification when I post future videos. And of course, make sure to like and share. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching to the end of the video. And we'll have another one out soon. Have a good day.